Hi, babe. Welcome to the Horror Babe Show. I'm your host, Chelsea Beller. Now, it's spring, which is a perfect time for outdoor activities, family gatherings, and of course, what's all on our minds? Weddings. I heard Radio Silence has been writing a sequel to their horror movie, Ready or Not. Since hearing this, I decided I need to watch the first one because it looked really good and I've heard really good things about it, but I haven't heard a ton about it. I don't feel like it's part of mainstream horror movies, really. I could be wrong. I just personally haven't heard that much about it. But this plot kind of reminded me of another horror movie, The Invitation. Not that one, that one. So I thought, why not do a little compare and contrast? Tea sipping ASMR. Oh, okay. My friend gave me this mug and I love it. Now, I am only comparing these on the basis that the plot revolves around a huge wedding that takes place on an enormous estate with a quirky little in-law twist. Let's start with The Invitation, a horror thriller from 2022 written by Blair Butler and directed by Jessica M. Thompson, starring Nathalie Emmanuel and Thomas Doherty. Natalie plays a young woman named Evie who lives in New York and decides to take a DNA test. This leads to her meeting a cousin from England. She ends up meeting with this cousin that previously she didn't know anything about, and he invites her to a wedding the following week in England. At first she hems and haws, but he makes it sound too good to be true, so she goes. Might I add, he was way too excited about the fact that she was a female cousin, so that was kind of a red flag, or at least an orange flag. So she flies to this enormous, gorgeous estate. Things are a little weird, but she ends up meeting DeVille, who's the lord of the house, and he's hot, so that occupies her time for the most part. DeVille is fully enamored with her, and of course, they end up doing the do. And then he coyly suggests a shotgun wedding. She scoffs, sarcastically says, yeah, and then they go on their merry way. Well, I'm sure you didn't see this coming, but the wedding she was invited to is her own. No. Yes, she and Mr. Cheekbones are getting hitched. It comes out that there's these three families who possess a great deal of wealth and status, and they do so because they serve up their female members, family members, to DeVille, and he in turn gives them wealth and status. Why do they serve up their female family members to this random hot guy? Oh, because he's a vampire. Yeah. All the red accents and the gorgeous castle, mansion, estate, whatever, weren't a huge tip off, or the fact that he was gorgeous. Vampires have to be beautiful, it's just the law. Well, she tries to run away, but of course they catch her. She even cries as she's walking down the aisle, but part of the wedding ceremony is she is also turned into a vampire. So that happens, but then she turns the tables on everyone. She causes a fire during the ceremony right after she was turned into a vampire. She has crazy superhuman strength. She runs away. She ends up killing hot vampy husband. With him dies her vampire powers, so those are gone. And then she just returns to normal. Of course, she does the traditional strut out the front door of the mansion while the whole estate is burning to the ground. It's iconic. Though this moment in particular didn't give me that warm and fuzzy feeling that scene normally would. It was a bit lackluster. Oh yes, and I almost forgot. 2 weeks later, She and her best friend return to England. She sees one of the surviving cousins, turns to her best friend and says, "You know what to do?" Her best friend nods and they walk toward the guy. And that's the end of the movie. So now two mortal human women are going to murder the surviving mortal human men who were involved in the whole vampire shenanigans. And that's the end of the movie? Here's my ending. She stays a vampire and makes all the crazy witch... What? And now the rich white families are her slaves. Yeah, that's a great ending. Write that. I wanted to like this movie. I love vampires. I love big, giant, crazy mansions. I love England. And yet, in terms of the story, I guessed how this was going to go pretty quickly. There wasn't really a twist for me. I just saw it all coming. There wasn't a lot of gore or suspense. Some good amount of jump scares, I guess. Good being a relative term. I think all the scares were jump scares. And I'm sorry, Game of Thrones fans, but I was not a fan of our lead lady. She did not have the depth for the role, in my opinion. She plays assertive well enough, but the subtler emotions she didn't quite have a grasp on. And because of that, I didn't really care when she was about to marry rich, hot vampire husband. That sounds fine. Like literally both of her parents died unexpectedly. And the ending that I conceived is like avenging her parents' deaths. Like, my parents didn't get to live long, full lives, but I will live forever in their honor. That sounds great. Let's write that. A little latte. Moving on to Ready or Not. Samara Weaving stars as Grace, a young woman who came from nothing, who marries a rich-ass white dude with a crazy family he doesn't talk to anymore. But it is tradition for this family to have their weddings at the estate. Tradition means a lot to this family. The wedding is beautiful and they can't wait to spend the rest of their lives together. But wait, it is tradition to play a game at midnight on the night of the wedding night. Grace finds this quirky and charming, but she can tell her now husband is pretty nervous. The patriarch introduces this box and he tells this whole elaborate story about the box, how he got the box, and she puts a blank playing card into the box and the box comes out with the game that they will play. So the box chooses the game for you. Of course, on the card it says hide and seek. Now every time they've played a game, every time there's been a wedding for the past 30 years, the game has been like Old Maid. Very simple, boring, blah. But hide and seek is a different game to this family, one could say. They tell her to hide, and then just like when we were little kids on a playground, they go and grab the weapons. The father, mother, the groom Alex, his sister, his brother-in-law, and his sister-in-law, and the butler are all after her. Now, she doesn't know what's going on until Alex's sister accidentally shoots a maid dead. Then it becomes a game of cat and mouse. People keep accidentally shooting and killing the maids, which is honestly hilarious. Why wouldn't she just leave, you ask? Great question. Well, of course, this rich-ass family has locked and secured all the doors and windows, so there's no way out. But then Alex, the groom, figures out a way to unlock the whole security system, and she gets out. And then the butler comes after her, but then she takes out the butler. Then there's this ritual that they almost perform like 3 times, but she escapes every time. This girl is a fighter, man. However, by now it is dawn, and that is important because you see, this family made a deal with the devil. They call him La Belle. For their fortunes, they have to sacrifice the new family member when the hide and seek card is played, or else. And that or else is, or else the whole family will die by dawn. Now, Grace didn't really believe this. I think a couple of the family members didn't even really believe it. But then dawn came, and they opened the windows, and one by one, these family members, boom, pop, splat, one by one, these horrible, heartless people just start spontaneously exploding. Finally, all who's left is Alex and Grace, the bride and groom. He's apologizing to Grace, and immediately she goes, I want a divorce. Splat. He spontaneously combusts. La Belle, the devil guy, appears out of nowhere, gives her a little nod, and then disappears again. She won. She won the game. She won. And then, of course, she does the very traditional strut out the front door of the burning down estate. She's free. I felt this. I felt this moment so deeply. I was smiling. There were moments when she was hiding that she was being as quiet as a mouse, and I was being as quiet as a mouse with her. I was trying not to breathe. I was trying not to move. I was just frozen with her. I was so in it. The suspense was real with this. She was so funny, very relatable. I got her character immediately. I felt for her because I was like, yeah, that's how I would react in this situation too. I loved that she went from this gorgeous, pristine, white, lacy dress to drenched in blood. Her hand injured from a gunshot and a nail, covered in blood with her little yellow Converse. It just really showed how much she went through. Like, just looking at her, you could just see it. You could see it because of the costume and makeup, but also because her face, like her expressions were fantastic. She played this character perfectly. It is considered a horror comedy. I'm not always a fan of horror comedies. I like my horror to be pretty grim most of the time, but I also really appreciate when horror doesn't take itself too seriously. Like when each family member just started spontaneously exploding, I lost my mind. And so did Grace. Like Grace just starts laughing. It was like a relief. Like she went through so much. She literally fell into a ditch of goat remains and human remains. So much. So yeah, that ending was such a good payoff. When it's a payoff like that and not just funny for the sake of funny, that's what makes a horror for me. So because of that, I am so excited for Ready or Not 2. I know they're working on the sequel. I hope it actually comes through. I don't know if they would use Samara again. I guess not, or maybe they would. I don't know, but this is such a great film. I have really high hopes. So, in comparison, Ready or Not is a fantastic horror comedy film. It fits that genre perfectly. It had a great story. Not exactly believable, but it's a horror comedy, so you can believe it. And the acting was phenomenal. The gore was I loved it. I loved all of it. Every disgusting thing that happened to her, I was like, this is awful, but I love it. The Invitation fell a little flat for me. It wasn't that great. I wasn't really on board. I didn't believe she didn't immediately know what was happening, and I didn't really sympathize with her. So I would give Ready or Not probably a solid 5 out of 5, you know? Invitation, 2.5. Yeah. 2.5. 3 just because the guy was so hot. Well, I'm dying to know. What did you think of these movies? That's it from me. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, follow, and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram and Letterboxd to see what I'm watching and what I'm rating. Bye, babe.